the crossroads of the Ozarks, greetings and welcome to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we're so glad you've chosen to join us once again. And you're in our living room.
Yes.
You don't see it, but we are. That's where we are.
We've got the equipment to do this from here. We decided this is really actually convenient.
Yeah, it's really cold outside, and
Yeah.
those of you living in Canada and Alaska, well, you're probably going
Laughing.
"It's
Cold,
not."
you don't know from cold.
You don't know cold. Well, it's cold to us, and we just have decided to stay in with the dogs. The dogs are in their crate, enjoying a little bit of downtime.
I've got some time to work on my chew bone now, so thank you.
Yeah, finally, they're just, those people are so needy.
Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you for downloading our app that brings all of our content directly to you and bypasses the gatekeepers out there. Video, audio content right into your smartphone or tablet, iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle Fire. You can also add us to your smart TV or set-top box.
Is it still a smart TV if we're on it?
It's smarter TV.
I see
trademark.
what you did there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, and Google TV. We're on all of those.
We're everywhere.
Yeah, so you can get those linked at gilberthouse.org/app or pidradio.com/app.
Since March of 2005, they've
Yes.
been everywhere.
Coming up on 20 years. We were talking yesterday, and I think this is funny, thinking back on those early days when we first hit 100 downloads of the podcast, and we were just doing a happy dance. But the early days, before everybody and their brother had a podcast, it's almost like a given now. It's like, okay, you've got a network television show. Now, when are you going to start doing the podcast? It's like, okay, why are you doing both?
It's sort of, you're in the second grade. Why don't you have a podcast?
Yes. Get out there and start podcasting, Timmy. We were, in the early days, in the early podcast rankings.
When it was difficult to do.
When it was still difficult to do, right. We were doing it with, and if you go back into our archives, look into the PID Radio archives for those 2005, 2006 shows, you can hear the difference in the audio quality.
It's huge.
We were using a Plantronics consumer grade gaming headset or something, and run through a Rube Goldberg setup to get the audio into a laptop.
It was crazy, and once it got into the laptop, it had to go through a program called Soundflower, and then through this other app that was the code to actually upload it and correct format for the very few places where you could actually send your content.
Yeah.
Because podcasting really wasn't a thing. It was
not. Apple was begging people, please submit to it was still the iTunes store back then instead of Apple Podcasts. And they published a list of top podcasts. We were looking at ourselves as like, hey, we're like 3 spots ahead of Nightline with Ted Koppel.
Yeah.
In your face, Koppel! And of course now we're not anywhere near the top of any charts.
Oh, we're not, and that's not what we desire anyway. Our only desire is to try to do the best we can with the tools that the Lord has given us. And speaking of that, at the end of this podcast, we're going to tell you all about our plans. You've heard us talking about our store, our virtual store, if you want to call it that, because you can place orders on the app, or through our website, gilberthouse.org/store. But because of time constraints, and we are being asked to do more conferences, and there are so many things that are already happening. 2025 is just about full.
Our dance card is just about full for 2025.
Just about full,
this is the year, I think, that people are fully committed to coming back into live conferences.
I so agree with you, and I think that's why we're getting invited to so many.
Yeah.
That dance card is filling up. Because of that, Derek and I are going to close our store, but it will be open through the end of this month, and we are going to slash prices.
Right.
So go into the store starting this afternoon probably. We're going to start working on lowering those prices to really, move the product out of the store. Look, if we don't make any profit on it, we don't really care. The biggest thing that we have to pay for is the software, and of course we pay for the product as well, but we mainly want it in your hands instead of in our barn.
Yes. So we'll give you more details at the end of the program. We've also got a major announcement about our fall Israel tour.
Yes.
It is still on. but we're also looking at a tour next spring. So we'll give you details on that at the end of the program. So
Listen
stick around.
all the way through.
Yeah.
See, now you have to listen to the whole thing.
This is
tricky.
Yeah, the consultant that worked with me back when I was doing daily secular talk radio was telling me about that. Tease ahead. Always tell people why it's worth their while to spend the time and listen all.
No, they're fast forwarding through it now.
Scrolling
we don't need to
through.
listen to the
What's the big
blather.
excitement? Yeah. Wait, don't scrub ahead. Stay here. A lot happened this week.
Well, first of all, Monday, big day Monday, the 20th.
Oh yes, coming up, we got the inauguration of Donald Trump, the first president since Grover Cleveland to serve 2 non-consecutive terms as president of the United States. They've had to move it indoors.
Yeah, and we've got friends who are going there. So
actually, Brad Davolt, Brad and Debbie came to visit us. We met them on our 2018 Israel tour. Brad said he's not going.
Okay, well, we have other friends who are going. I haven't told you about it. But
okay.
Yeah, I saw on Facebook that some other people that we know said that they were on their way to D.C. So I'm assuming that means that this couple are going to the inauguration. And I pray that they are warm, and every one of you, if you're planning on going or you have a friend or loved one who's going to the inauguration, may it be a wonderful time. Because I got to tell you, if you've never been to Washington, D.C., it's a cold time of year to go.
It is.
But I went there in August, and it was really warm. It was so oppressively warm.
Yeah, it's close to the ocean, so humidity is high.
It was very high. I was constantly
But
sweating.
with the snow and the very low wind chills expected, standing outside for the duration of the inauguration just is not doable. So it's been moved inside the United States Capitol, below the apotheosis of Washington.
Well, that's what I asked you the other day, if it was going to be in the rotunda.
It is.
So yeah, that's a big deal.
Yep.
Symbolically.
Symbolically it is. And if you want more information on that, get our new book, The Gates of Hell, where we talk about the Ganymede Code on the inside of the rotunda there, the apotheosis of Washington.
Who knew that was there?
Yeah.
Somebody knew.
Well,
Fallen Realm at the very least, they knew. So what else is going on?
Well, the other thing, and I just want to bring this up, just so we can timestamp this and we can go back and look at this afterwards. Tomorrow, President Trump is supposed to be attending a rally inside the stadium where the Washington Wizards and the Washington Capitals, so the NBA team and the NHL team play. And I was notified by a friend of ours in Oklahoma City of a woman who claims she had a prophecy of an attempt on Mr. Trump's life at an ice rink, at a hockey rink. And again, this Capitol, I think it's Capital One Arena. I forget what the stadium in Washington, D.C. is called. But again, it's where the Wizards and the Capitals play. So it's not exclusively a hockey rink. It's dual use, hockey, basketball.
The name Wizards, though, that is like, who chose that?
Well,
just because it's another W sound.
Yeah, it used to be the Washington Bullets, and they decided that was just because of the...
I can see why they'd take that out.
Yeah. It used to be the Baltimore Bullets. They moved to D.C., and then in D.C., where there are a lot of those flying around, they decided it just was not a good look. But yeah, the Wizards is somebody... clearly thought that was less problematic.
Do they have a lot of wizards flying around, though? I mean...
Well, again, you get into D.C. and you get the architecture of the Capitol and of the city itself.
Yeah.
Chris Pinto's Riddles in Stone documentary is really worth watching if you want to dig into that. But again, we detail that in The Gates of Hell and in The Second Coming of Saturn. We kind of revisit some of that same material. Tom Horn in Zenith 2016 about the United States Capitol and the symbolism of the Washington Monument, the obelisk, and the dome.
There are so many crazy things in Washington.
Right.
I think it's now been moved. I've talked about this before, but there's a park that follows the river, and the park itself comes down to a point.
Right.
And at that point, there used to be an art installation that showed a giant emerging from the earth.
Right. Yeah, that's been moved to a couple of different locations. So, a lot of stuff there. If you've got eyes to see, you recognize there's something going on in Washington. So anyway, We pray that nothing happens at this rally tomorrow for President Trump. But again, this is out there. People are asking about it. And yeah, look, we don't know. Pray this is not, that this is just somebody had a bad dream. And
well, it's entirely, but I'll tell you, the bottom line is that Donald Trump is in the hands of the Lord.
Yes.
No matter what his personal belief is, and I think he does lean towards believing in Jesus. Whether or not he actually has made the personal commitment, I don't know. But there's no doubt in my mind that the Lord is holding him in his hand and has raised him up for this season for reasons that we have yet to see.
Mm-hmm.
I think the next 4 years are going to be very interesting. In fact, I think this year is going to be extremely interesting. And I've said that before, and someone asks, what do you mean by that? I mean by that not only does it I don't like to use the word feel. I keep seeing major doors opening when I pray about this year. And I believe that those are good doors, that the gospel of Christ is going to be spread throughout the world. I think that this could be the year of the Great Awakening, the next Great Awakening, the great, outpouring of the Holy Spirit could begin this year.
Yeah.
But prophetically speaking, you and I have spoken to many writers, including Josh Peck, and also about the
Dr. Ken Johnson.
Yeah, Dr. Ken Johnson.
2025,
thank you very much.
kicking off the final 50-year Jubilee period.
Yes, and of course Tom Horn also talked about it.
Right.
So I think this is a very important year.
Absolutely. Well, we pray again for President Trump's safety, but we do that all the time. And we wish no harm to come on any politician anywhere.
I have prayed consistently whenever the Lord would remind me, which was actually quite often. Prayed for Joe Biden, but also praying for Netanyahu and praying for Putin, praying for all the leaders of the world, that their behavior, their decisions would not lead us into I think what's going to be World War III. And is the Lord planning on World War III? Yeah. It's prophetically going to come at some point. Is that going to start this year? Possibly. Yeah.
Well, who knows?
I
think I pray that the inauguration of President Trump starts to de-escalate things in Eastern Europe, because this week we saw two incidents where NATO had to scramble warplanes because of Russian attacks very close to the border with Poland, the borders with Poland, and then with Romania. And these attacks were not just ballistic missiles fired. The attack that was close to the Polish border involved strategic bombers, the Tu-22 and the Tu-95. So there were manned aircraft involved in bombing energy infrastructure in Ukraine in one of the coldest part of winter. But this followed, that was on Wednesday this past week, that followed an attack by Ukraine on Russia Tuesday involving British-made Storm Shadow missiles and U.S. ATACMS ballistic missiles, both of which, the use of both, Vladimir Putin had said months ago would constitute NATO's full direct involvement in the war between Ukraine and Russia.
And yet, we still did it. We gave them that material and
gave them permission to use it.
And look, this is only my opinion, but I think it's very likely that the U.S. and Great Britain and possibly other NATO nations have their own advisors in Ukraine.
The reason Putin said that use of those missiles constituted direct involvement by NATO is because the Ukrainians don't have the capability to target those missiles, meaning you had to have Brits and Americans, our soldiers, actually targeting those missiles.
But they're almost always called advisors.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the semantics fooled the Russians. Just advisors? It's okay. No. It has been a proxy war since the beginning, and it is very, very close to becoming an open shooting war.
Right now, the situation in Europe and the situation in the Middle East, as well as the situation in the South China Sea, those are poised on the edge of a knife.
Yeah.
In other words, it can go either way, and no matter which way it goes, it's not going to be pleasant. If you've seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I can't remember, I think it's in the second movie where the big attack on Helm's Deep occurs, and you have the two armies facing each other, and then one guy accidentally fires his arrow. He hasn't been told to. He's tense, and it's easy to do.
Right.
That could so easily happen, and those scrambled jets, that could have been the trigger. That could have been the point where Putin took that as direct threat.
Right. We should also note that the week before these attacks, so last week, not the week just ended, but the week before, Zelensky was at a meeting of European leaders, and he again called for NATO to send troops. He didn't phrase it that way. He was very circuitous in his language, but that's what he meant. He said the only way to bring Russia to the negotiating table is for NATO to commit ground troops. In other words, for the UK, Germany, France, United States, Canada to actually send our soldiers to Ukraine and get involved in the fighting.
Yeah.
Well, again, we're all but there right now.
There is another country that straddles NATO and the Middle East, and that's Turkey. And Turkey has no business being in NATO. None.
No, it really doesn't, because Erdogan is wanting to rebuild the caliphate, and if you look at the 1,400-year history of Islam's relations with the rest of the world, it was, say, 400 years ago, around 350 years ago, 1682, when the armies of the Ottoman Empire, mainly Turks, surrounded the city of Vienna and very nearly captured Vienna, Austria, which would then have opened up Germany to the north, which at the time were a bunch of warring principalities, and Italy to the south. The Vatican would have fallen to Islam. And if it hadn't been for the King of Poland,
Jan Sobieski, hadn't been for an overweight king.
Yes, leading the winged hussars in the biggest cavalry charge since the Rohirrim charged the armies of Mordor outside Gondor. Aside from that, the attack by the Polish cavalry on the forces of the Turks at Vienna.
But I'll tell you, you mentioned that Erdogan wants to put the old caliphate back together. He wants to be the head of the new Ottoman Empire.
Right.
There has been since 2019 a sanction restraint on Turkey with regards to Syria. That's now been removed by Joe Biden.
Interesting. Biden, he's just
trying to burn it down.
Yeah. Boy. And we'll talk about his farewell address here in a minute. But yeah, I think the Turks, we need to keep a very close eye on what Erdogan is doing. And I know Joel Richardson has been saying this for a while, and I think he's right. We also agree that when you look at Ezekiel 38:39, the Gog-Magog war, that the rallying point for the forces of the Antichrist, Gog, are coming from Turkey, because the uttermost north, that phrase actually means Mount Tzafon. Tzafon is north in Hebrew, but it's the word for north because that was the name of the mountain that was sacred to Baal, king of the Yarkate Tzafon, right? And Jesus in Matthew 12, beginning of verse 22, identifies Baal, Beelzebul, Baal the prince, as Satan.
I think I've always believed, well, not always, not from the moment I took my first breath, but for nearly the entire, long time since I was 9 years old, that I've been studying Bible prophecy. I've believed that those 7 churches of Revelation, they're all in Turkey.
Yep.
It's called Asia Minor at the time. They're all in Anatolia and really grouped very closely together. The Lord could have chosen There were a lot of churches at the time. Why not the church in Jerusalem?
Or Antioch.
Yes, exactly. Rather than these. And I believe it's because that's where the heart of it all is going to, that the dark heart of the fallen realm.
Yeah.
That the head of everything.
Pergamum. I know where you live, where Satan dwells.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Which is another reference to the storm god, the great altar of Zeus.
Yep.
So, the fall of the Assad regime in Syria was a blow to Iran because the rebels who've taken Damascus, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, are Sunni Muslims. It's basically just an outgrowth of Al-Qaeda.
So much of this is Shia versus Sunni.
It is Shia versus Sunni, right. And these so-called moderate rebels have put on business suits, and now they're being courted by the foreign ministers of the West, who want to bring Syria into the world, grouping of nations. But the fact is, HTS doesn't really control Syria as you see it on the map. Everything east of the Euphrates River is pretty much controlled by the Kurds. And Erdogan hates the Kurds. The Turks hate the Kurds. Mm-hmm. But see, that's one of the things about that region. The Kurds, the Persians, the Arabs, the Turks, they all don't like each other.
But the restraints on Erdogan regarding Syria have been removed.
And it's significant that Erdogan's chief of intelligence, the equivalent of the director of the CIA for Turkey, showed up in Damascus just a few days after Assad fled to Moscow and was seen being driven around Damascus by the head of HTS, al-Jilani. And he visited the Umayyad mosque, which was the mosque built by the Umayyad Caliphate.
The Ottomans.
The Ottomans, yeah. So they're very significant symbol of what Erdogan plans and who's really calling the shots for HTS. Now, again, they only control the central and western part of Syria. The Kurds have the northeast. There are Turkish forces inside Syria along the northern border. And you've got the Alawite and small Christian enclave in the west along the sea. And then you've got the Druze in the south. So Syria is a divided nation, but Turkey is heavily invested in what's happening in Syria right now.
Well, right now in the Middle East, of course, we've got the ceasefire with Hamas, which was, as of this morning, it was approved by the Israeli government overnight, but they have approved it, which means that it goes into effect, I think, tomorrow, our Sunday. The exchange rate per hostage is very high.
Yeah.
If I were the leader of the nation, I'll be honest with you, I would not have agreed to it.
He's under tremendous pressure, both internally and externally. Pray for Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Please do, because he is being pressured by the West.
Oh my goodness, my hair would be as white as his if I were in his position right now. Just because of the stress. I wouldn't have any hair;
it would just be gone.
It would fall out.
I'd pull that.
Because you've got a lot of people inside Israel who don't like Netanyahu. Avi Lipkin puts it this way: Israel is 60% conservative, so the majority of the country backs Netanyahu and what his government is doing. You got 20% socialist, and that 20% is embedded at high levels of the judiciary and the military.
That is the Israeli swamp.
The Israeli deep state, yes, exactly right. And then 20%, he said, are Arabs. And the Arabs are kind of recalcitrant.
They're not homogenous.
Regardless.
There's some Arabs that,
Many of them are happy. They would rather live inside Israel.
Yes, and under Israel's government, because they have more freedom.
Right, like
especially the women.
The Druze, who are Arabs, would rather be part of Israel than be subject to government run by fundamentalist Sunnis.
Yeah.
So they've agreed to it. Two members of the cabinet, members of Netanyahu's conservative coalition, Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, who had two of the really right-wing parties in Israel, voted against the deal, but the cabinet as a whole, the security cabinet, has approved it. So we'll see what happens. Hamas, the exchange rate that Hamas is getting for this, it is insane for the 33 that they're supposed to parcel out over the next 7 weeks.
Yes.
6 weeks.
So
6
many,
weeks.
Okay, like 4 people or 5 people get returned.
Yeah, it's like 3, 3, 3, and then 4 on the last
Yeah.
day. And maybe not all of them are alive. We don't know.
Yeah.
And in exchange for that, they're getting like 30 per hostage.
Yeah, it's
'Cause
over 1,000 terrorists are
Right.
going to be released.
Now, what has been reported is that Israel will have the right to veto the release of any really dangerous terrorists, people who have been convicted of committing acts of terror against Israelis.
That's
But-
all of them.
Well, presumably.
Pretty much all of them.
Presumably. But there have been some reports from Israel that that's maybe not true, and that some of the dangerous prisoners who are being released will be released into Judea and Samaria, which is what the world calls the West Bank.
Yes, well, it only takes one terrorist who wants to start a movement.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened last time.
Well, yeah, in exchange to get Gilad Shalit
Yes.
released, Israel had to release, I don't remember how many it was, hundreds of terrorists who'd been incarcerated, one of whom was Yahya Sinwar, who wound up running things on the ground in Gaza.
Yeah.
And he's the one who coordinated the October 7th attack.
Right.
So you get somebody like that released, and next thing you know, you got another. It was put this way by one columnist in Israel: we're not saving the lives of 33 hostages, we're endangering the lives of thousands of Israelis.
Yes,
And
all of Israel.
I understand that it's easier for us to say this because we don't have family members who've been held for more than 400 days since October of 2023 in inhuman conditions. So we do understand that. But looking at the history of Islam and looking at the history of Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Fatah, the Palestine Liberation Organization, and other organizations like this, PFLP and others that have just committed to destroying Israel by any means necessary. I mean, we in the West look at this and say, why would they, look at what's happened to Gaza. Why would they start a war that would result in this? Look, if Hamas survives, if even just a handful of them survive and Israel stops fighting, they declare victory, and then they start building up their forces again and preparing for the next attack, because they value death the way we value life. And that's why Israel's willing to make the deal. We're saving 33. That's what they're focusing on.
Yes.
And then perhaps more after that. Those who are committed to the cause of Islam and violent jihad, they don't care. They don't care because they believe that when they die, they are going to be rewarded by Allah. And, you know, I recognize that for some people here in the West, hearing that statement sounds like, well, that's really bigoted. You're just really biased against Muslims. No, I've just read enough history to understand from their own writings.
Yes.
This is what they believe.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, we need to take a break. And when we
Indeed,
come back,
indeed.
we'll continue this talk.
Calm down.
Well, we will also talk about eggs.
Eggs.
An existential crisis.
And we got to talk about Biden's farewell speech.
Oh, I know.
You gotta hang in there. We'll be back with more on PID Radio. Jesus declared that the gates of hell would not prevail against his church. But humans have tried to contact fallen angels on the other side of those gates since the Stone Age, and they're still trying today. Arm yourself with information. During January, our special offer features our new books, The Gates of Hell and Destination Earth, co-authored with Donna Howell and Allie Anderson. Find out where Jesus was baptized, why it wasn't where most people think, and why it was a declaration of war against the fallen realm. How the belief in ancient aliens is based on the New Age and occult teachings of Madame Blavatsky and Aleister Crowley, and how Hollywood has effectively spread the ET gospel. Our 2 new books, plus the DVDs What Lies Beneath, about the world's oldest temple, Göbekli Tepe, and the 13-part teaching DVD based on the second coming of Saturn. This is a $99 value, but during January, it's just $45 plus shipping and handling. Only at gilberthouse.org/store. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we're so glad that you've hung in there through the break. As we said earlier, we're going to be telling you all about the deals at the end of this blathery episode, I guess. But we want to remind you we are going to go to Israel, and we will tell you all about that also. So hang in there till the end. Well, eggs.
Eggs.
I got to tell you, if you've been to the store lately, you and I, over the last year or so, we've generally bought our eggs from a friend of ours. He's got lots of chickens and always has way too many eggs. So we'll buy 4 or 5 dozen at a time from him as he comes over. So we always had eggs. Well, it's wintertime. Your chickens don't always lay, but also we've not been able to see our friend because he's been sick. And he's also been doing jobs elsewhere.
Yes, exactly. Very busy,
He was
which is
working
good.
here all summer, but so we haven't bought from him for a while. But I've been to the store a few times, and I'm telling you, mind you, we live in a very small town, where we shop is Crane, and it's a very small town. And so the grocery store there isn't going to get the best deals on products. They do keep their prices pretty good, I have to say.
They do.
And their products are very good.
Yeah.
And the people there are wonderful. I love them so much. But eggs, $7, $8 a dozen?
Yeah.
I mean, really?
That's been affected by the avian flu outbreak, which has
Well, that's
resulted
what
in the culling of a lot of flocks.
Lot of laying hens. And if you think that sounds made up, it is absolutely what's going on. I have looked at many of the egg farmer, the poultry websites where they're keeping track of this. They're putting information out there where you'll have various egg-laying operations that are talking about how few egg layers they've got now. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And you may think, well, millions of chickens haven't gotten sick. No, they haven't. They haven't. However, if you find 1 or 2 cases in a flock, the assumption is that it's going to spread, because it does spread very quickly amongst birds. It's best to just kill them all. That's how it's done. Suddenly you'll have 1 million birds that are all dead.
Yeah.
They go in, they shut everything up, they put gas in, and then they go in and they bag them all up.
Yeah, it's sad, but sadly, this strain of avian flu is so communicable and so highly pathogenic.
Yes, and it's been spreading amongst a huge number of species. Huge number of species.
Now, how weird is it that this is spreading to mammals?
Extremely. Typically, this is avian flu, so it's, influenza A. It's one of the many types of it. Influenza A has, I think it's something like 18 types of hemagglutinin, and that's the H number. And neuraminidase, I think there are like 14 types of that, and maybe even more of the H. A lot, and I think that scientists are constantly discovering new ones. They look at the genes that compose that H, which is that hemagglutinin. It's how it gets into your cell. The neuraminidase is how it gets out. So the way those are structured is huge with regards to how it spreads. And typically, cows are not subject to influenza A. They don't get avian flu. They generally get influenza D, which isn't communicable to humans. But cattle, marine life, zoo animals, cats, dogs, the number of species that have been not just found infected, but who've died. Big cats, small cats, cats in general, felines for whatever reason, if they get this, if they get to H5N1, they die.
Now, I know that there have been people who are looking at this with skepticism because of what happened after 2020.
I get it.
And the reaction. But let me just say for your reference, Sharon's background is in molecular biology with an emphasis in genetics, and she graduated as an adult student with honors, which means that she was actually paying attention in class. Unlike when I was in college in 19 and I was distracted by girls and being on the radio and other sorts of things, and I managed to scuffle through with, I think, a 2.8 GPA.
I think there's a big value to going to college as an older student.
Well, yeah, because you're a little more focused and you're a little more mature, and you understand what it is that interests you instead of, okay, what's the quickest way for me to get out of here, which is why I picked economics as my major.
I'd be there today. I just love college.
I would now too, if I was able to go back and study.
That's what we'll do.
History.
We'll just go back to school, you and I.
Well, I'm looking, hey, in the New Jerusalem, when we get those glorified bodies, hey, great, yeah, our job in the archives, please, Lord.
Yes, thank you.
But anyway, the point being, Sharon has been looking at emerging diseases since we met. Because I know early on, if you go back into our archives at PID Radio, go into the app, look in the archives for 2005 in the interviews with Dr. Henry Nyman. 20 years ago, we were talking to him about avian influenza.
H5N1.
H5N1. Sharon was the first one that I know of in the Western world. Maybe there was one or two other people who were catching on to this, talking about COVID-19. This is back when we were still calling it the Wuhan flu in early 2020.
It was being called the mystery pneumonia.
Mystery pneumonia. And we talked about this on Sci Friday in January of 2020. So this is something that she's been watching very carefully. And when evidence presents that says, okay, this is being overhyped, we said that on Sci Friday, and it got some of our programs yanked off the internet.
Yes, but let me say this. It's real. Currently, H5N1 is very communicable from animals to humans. There have been, I think, like 30 cases of it or something. But only one mutation, one mutant strain, and it's been contracted by two individuals. One, a young person, a teenager, I think, in Canada, and an older man who had comorbidities in Louisiana, or Alabama.
Louisiana.
I was right in the first place, Louisiana. And he passed away.
Right.
But again, he had a lot of other things going on that contributed sadly, to his death.
Right.
I don't think that the person in Canada, I think that person may still be in the hospital, but is not in as bad a shape. Younger person. Most of the cases are so mild.
Right.
Most people don't even know they've got it. It's only when they're
Exactly.
tested and you've got antibodies means you've been exposed to it.
Yeah, and in fact, last week, I was notified by the nursing home where my mother lives that they've got influenza A in the building.
But they don't know which one it is. I mean, influenza A is
Right.
huge. So which
Exactly.
H it is, which N it is, don't know.
Yeah, and the fact is, they didn't. It's like, okay, well, you want to come over and see your mom for lunch? No problem.
Well, that's
Don't
just
worry about it.
Influenza A is one of the most common flus that we get.
Right.
It's just when the H is just right and the N is just right, it can really lead to some problems. What is it? H3N8, I think, is one that was really leading to a high mortality rate in, I want to say, Vietnam a few years ago. So there are a lot of them, and none of them so far that have high mortality rates have become highly communicable human to human.
Yeah.
None so far.
Good
so
news.
We need to pray for that. Yeah, that is the good news. But here's that other shoe. The Biden administration has given hundreds of millions of dollars.
$590 million.
To Moderna and other outfits like that to come up with a system for essentially a blueprint for taking out whatever comes along. In other words, how can we tailor a shot, a vaccine, that will take care of what we know to be the H and the N now, but in other words, they're trying to find a real common denominator in all of these. What can we go after And many of these organizations are planning to use the RNA platform.
Yep.
The U.S. already has a stockpile of, I think it is H5N1 vaccine. It is the old egg-based vaccine, and I have no idea how old it is. I'm assuming it goes back to 2005, or if it's even still good. Remember the story of, I think it was some of the, was it smallpox that was discovered in a freezer that wasn't plugged in or something by a woman who was in the janitorial service at Fort Detrick, was it? It was somewhere, early days of PID radio, that also we've got someone who was shipping, putting highly communicable diseases into a box and shipping it, via a typical carrier. No, you don't do that.
Right. Yeah. There are
ways it can get out.
a lot of human errors, sort of thing. Yeah. It's not. We're not at the Stand scenario.
Oh no,
Stephen King's scenario.
But I think the
it is
Stand
something to
scenario
watch.
is coming because of what we read in the Book of Revelation.
Well, yes, exactly. And to that end, we should note that it was reported this past week that Marburg virus has been reported in Tanzania.
Yes, and that has a 90% fatality rate.
Yeah. Tanzania, if you're not familiar with where it is on the map, it's on the east side of Africa. It's on the Indian Ocean, so it's on the coast.
Is it below the Horn?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It is fairly rare. It's Ebola-like in that it's a hemorrhagic
It's worse than
fever.
Ebola.
Yeah, it is worse because Ebola is like 25 to 50% fatal. Marburg is like 90% fatal.
And it's also highly communicable.
Yeah. As of this recording, it's infected 9 people. So this is not a widespread outbreak yet. They're trying to contain it. But the thing with Marburg is that there are no vaccines or treatments available, meaning that if you get it, there's a 9 out of 10 chance you will not survive.
Right.
Because health workers then are also at risk.
Health workers are at risk.
Because they can't be vaccinated against it.
Those who take care of the dead are at risk because the funerary practices require cleaning of the body and things like that. It's a very loving, send off for your family member or your friend, but it can lead to communicable situations where suddenly you've got everybody in the family and the extended family who've been exposed.
Right. So anyway, that is also something to keep an eye on. Again, not to panic or anything at this point, because again, we're only looking at 9 cases that officials are aware of, but they are looking at neighboring countries like Rwanda and Burundi, thinking that it may have spread, but that is something to pay attention to. Shifting gears to something that's got a segment of the population really, really freaked out, and that is the imminent ban on TikTok here in the United States.
Oh my goodness. I saw a report on that this morning. Of course, I get up really early, so I always have watched news, and I've done all sorts of things by the time most of you have decided to get up. But, I'm just crazy. But the report said that half of the U.S. population, 1/2 of our population, are on TikTok. And by that, I assume that they mean 1/2 have downloaded it. I don't know that everybody who's downloaded it, you and I know.
I think that number of downloads can be misleading because if you've got multiple mobile devices, like I had downloaded TikTok to a couple of devices because a year and a half ago when we were promoting our Israel tour, I posted short video clips to TikTok, and that was the only time I've ever used it.
Well, let me tell you, it's an interesting statistic when you think about it. The number of downloads, that's pretty easy to figure out. How do they know that 80% of those are under 30?
That is a good question, because I presume it's because they can track IP addresses and...
That's the point. They're tracking it.
Yeah.
They being not only the makers, ByteDance, which is a Chinese company, but also any carrier of the internet, the interface
Sure.
to use the app?
According to statistics, 2025 United States projected to have 113 million active users on TikTok.
That's a lot.
Worldwide, as of January, as of this recording, about 1.5 billion users worldwide. That's about 18% of the world's population using TikTok.
Well, tomorrow is supposed to be the sunset for TikTok, unless it somehow gets changed. But a lot of young people who just can't live without that addictive interface are going to another app called Red Note.
Yeah. And that's hilarious because Red Note is another Chinese company, but the name in Chinese translates to Little Red Book, as in the Little Red Book written by Mao Zedong, which is a collection of his sayings and wisdom that's handed out to everybody by the Chinese Communist Party. It's like their scriptures.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And so the Red Note app is slowly going to change the mind. Maybe not even slowly, because the nature of TikTok is it can change you very quickly. It can addict you to a certain type of information using, in the case of the American version of TikTok, it's, well, frankly, I think inappropriate behavior by young ladies, young men, and sometimes both in the same video. It's just bordering on porn in some cases.
Yeah. The irony of Red Note and the TikTok users who were used to putting that kind of content up there, going over to Red Note, is that Red Note, which is more directly controlled by, if it's not directly controlled by the CCP, at least its standards appear to be adhering to CCP or Chinese guidelines, because they do not allow LGBTQ plus content.
No, the whole purpose of it is to make you a really good citizen.
Hence the name, Little Red Book.
Yes, exactly. It's right there in the name. So I've already seen posts on X about by individuals who have left TikTok and gone to, there's a refugee from TikTok hashtag, or TikTok refugee. And some of them are saying the things you and I are saying, but others are already spouting the party line.
Yeah.
Well, the West has told you the Uyghurs are being mistreated. I've just seen posts by Uyghurs on Red Note, and they're fine. In fact, they love living in China.
Exactly.
I thought, oh my gosh.
The Uyghurs are Turkic peoples who are Muslim, and they are not happy living under Chinese rule. And this kind of gets back, by the way, not to detour too much from Red Note, because I just think this is hilarious. But the government of Turkey has just issued guidelines insisting now that all of the stands,
like Turkmenistan,
Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, which are settled by Turkic peoples who came from Central Asia.
Yeah.
And the Uyghurs, Xinjiang province in the western part of China, that whole region should be referred to as Turkestan. Not Turkmenistan, but Turkestan.
The Ottoman Empire.
Yes, exactly. There was a podcast I used to listen to years ago when I was doing outside sales, and I would drive 3-5 hours a day. Dave Emery was the host.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he's still producing it, but I haven't listened to him in a long time because I don't drive that much, and so I'm producing content now instead of consuming it. But he did a number of programs using open source, information just publicly available, news sources, showing that this was ultimately the goal. And this was long before Erdogan came to power. That even things like the outreach from the Turkish government to Native American, American Indian tribes, cultural exchanges, student exchanges, was because, hey, you came from Siberia, we're related, you're basically Turks, and stirring up.
They're putting the band back together.
They're trying to put the band back together, but and then ultimately looking at control of what was it Zbigniew Brzezinski called the world island?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Asia, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, from Kamchatka to Ireland, basically. You control that, you control the world.
Mm-hmm. And that's true.
And the Turks are looking to do that. And Erdogan is just the latest.
It's why he wanted to be part of NATO.
Right, because he sees himself as the gateway and he can play both sides, one against the other.
Yeah.
So anyway, but Red Note, I think the big sin, the great sin that got TikTok into so much trouble was not that they were stealing all of this data, because Google does it, Microsoft does it, Apple does it, Amazon does it. It's they weren't sharing it with the U.S. government. They're sending it to China.
Yes. Well, I watched an interview with two congressmen who were talking about the decision to ban any apps that are made by other countries. And the question was, well, Great Britain has an app that a lot of people use, and you're allowing that one. No, what we're actually saying, and I thought, that isn't what you said. Well, no, he says, what we're actually saying is if you are an unfriendly country. I know, and he said it, and I thought,
Defined.
So yes, exactly. You've just labeled China as unfriendly. Okay, I agree with that in certain parts, but we're trading partners with China. That could lead to problems. So I think down the road that there have to be a whole lot of conversations taking place that we're probably never going to be aware of between Chinese representatives and U.S. representatives and possibly even other Western representatives talking about the data sharing problem. And getting into that before we get to the Biden farewell speech, Biden just signed an executive order setting up the new AI system here in the U.S. He has signed a directive for increased power generation to provide the many gigawatts of power required for the AI system that is going to be generated in the U.S. He only this directive. Now, when you say he signed it. He didn't even read it. But he signed an order that says that the components of the AI system and the power generation need to be U.S. made primarily. Now, it was like primarily. I thought, does that mean that the big parts have to be U.S. made and the chips can come from, say, someplace else? I'm not really sure. But the bottom line is he's leaving office with a directive for us to build a major surveillance network. I think when Washington says an AI network, they're talking about some sort of overreaching Terminator scenario where we're all being given information, giving information, exchange of what we know for what you're going to tell us we should know. You get to program us, and we get to give you everything that you want to know about us.
Skynet.
Skynet. It's exact. Thank you. I couldn't think of it. I could only think of Terminator.
Yeah.
Or ARIA, which is
ARIA. Yes,
yeah.
That was the other thing I was thinking of. The defense network surveillance system in the movie Eagle Eye.
Yes.
Highly recommend you watching that, just if you want to get an idea of where we're going with technocracy.
Leaving with orders to build that, which tells me it's already being built.
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing how the rapid expansion of massive data centers for processing all of this data on the one hand, but also the rapid growth in artificial intelligence. I mean, we get solicitations via email. Hi, Gilbert House. Would you like to know how artificial intelligence can make your lives easier? Yeah.
No.
Yeah. In fact, one of them, they weren't really. It's like your AI must not be very good if you think we're
I
think
block
we're a
and report
restaurant.
spam.
Yeah, I know. The one I keep getting, somehow they think we're a restaurant. So their AI can't be very good. But when you're talking
Can I place
about
an order?
this this executive order to provide federal support to develop the energy generation capacity to power these AI systems. And of course, it's going to be clean energy.
That's just the other part. It has to be clean energy. Well, define that.
Well, there's only one source of so-called clean energy that isn't affected by clouds or low or lack of wind. I mean, if you're talking about
nuclear,
and that's nuclear power, right? We're already seeing Microsoft, for example, has partnered with a company that has now gotten permission to restart 3 Mile Island.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you remember the movie The China Syndrome, which actually made it a lot worse than it actually was.
Yeah, but it can be
still,
pretty darn bad. I mean, when it goes bad in a hurry, and it can affect an entire region.
Right.
Now, picture someone like, let's say Vladimir Putin, with his little finger on a button that can send off a supersonic missile, and he says, all I have to do is hit that nuclear facility.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. So rather than going back to sources of energy that we have in abundance here in the United States, like natural gas, which we have been using, but they've been de-emphasizing natural gas. Or coal, which we have in abundance. Yeah, a lot of coal. I mean, 15 years ago when we were getting ready to move to Illinois for me to work outside sales for the steel company there, the coal industry in southern Illinois was and the oil industry too, undergoing a boom because of advances that they'd made in extracting the coal without having to do open strip mining. And of course, it helps that the terrain of southern Illinois is very flat, so you can run rail cars, rail sidings to bring rail cars right up to the mine and dump the stuff right into, unlike West Virginia, where you can barely get a 20-foot box truck inside.
Or Kentucky
or Kentucky or
coal-rich regions.
Some of the mountains of Pennsylvania. So anyway, rather than going to those dependable sources of energy like coal or natural gas, because these data centers and AI facilities need constant, reliable power, we're looking at a resurgence in nuclear energy, which for years we said, no, we can't do that. We can't. No nuclear plants since the 1970s. Can't do it. Now they're restarting 3 Mile Island.
Yeah.
And they're getting ready to build. They're talking about building modular nuclear plants, like small nuclear plants on site at these data centers.
Little baby ones.
So I just think it's hilarious how the green energy agenda suddenly shifts. So, well, we need the AI, so the AI is more important than generating nuclear waste. Now, if they get thorium reactors online, if they can figure out the trick to getting more energy out of fusion reactions than goes in, maybe that's a solution. But it's interesting that the drive to create AI, and I'm thinking now in terms of your presentation, I Am AI, or the short story that opens our book, The Gates of Hell, about the development of a new sentient AI called Kronos, named that way very deliberately, is driving our government leaders to, by any means necessary, we've got to feed this beast.
Exactly. Well, we're going to have to talk more. I use that word
deliberately.
Yes. Well, you and I will need to talk more about this next week, but we need to talk about the Biden farewell address because I can hear the dogs in there getting restless.
Starting to wrestle, yeah. And we're getting close to the end of the hour.
I have to tell you, I watched that several times, and there's a part. His speechwriter wanted to have this thread of the Statue of Liberty as representing everything that he has stood for. And in the text, in the text, he talks about how the Statue of Liberty, first of all, I keep picturing the Ghostbusters, when he talks about how she can move and this and that. And I thought, All you have to do is put that boombox and play the right song and put the, that little goopy stuff on her, and she walks all over town.
That's right.
But he talked about how I think it's her right foot, is on the chain of broken bondage, is what is written in there. And that is what is on there. It represents freedom and freeing slavery. I mean, a lot of things, this was gifted to the United States by France in the 1860s. So I think it was 60s. And so this was just after the Civil War. So this idea of breaking bondage, human bondage. But I'm telling you, his diction was so slurred, yes. And look, we all get that way as we get older. So, but I think in his case, this was a particularly bad day for him, because every time I've heard it, it sounds like he says a chain of human bodies. And you heard it too.
I did, yes. We watched it the day after C-SPAN had it up there on, or I guess Associated Press had it on their YouTube channel. John Podhoretz, who's a former White House speechwriter, he's a conservative, but he described it, and you were saying the same thing, worst speech from the Oval Office ever.
Assuming it was the Oval Office. It looked like a set to
me.
Yeah,
it might have been a set, and we know that he's done other speeches that were purportedly from the White House that turned out to be from other buildings, other parts of the building. But anyway, this was ostensibly delivered from the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. Really, really bad speech. I mean, besides his diction troubles, and I can see now, I can sense there are times when I have more trouble enunciating than I did when I was in my 20s and I was doing Top 40 radio. I used to be able to speak a lot more quickly and still enunciate clearly. It's just an aging thing. This happens. So, all right, Biden's in his 80s. We'll give him a pass on that. But what he was saying, okay.
What he was reading.
Warning against the oligarchs and the influence of the uber wealthy on American politics. This was just 2 days earlier, had given the Presidential Medal of Freedom to George Soros.
Yes.
I mean, are you kidding me?
And many of his donors, we'll put it that way, are oligarchs. And by that we mean a very wealthy individual who has great influence over government.
Yeah, I mean, Kamala Harris, his vice president, raked in $1 billion in campaign donations and then he has the gall to sit there from the Oval Office and warn against the influence of the wealthy.
And he even invoked Eisenhower's departing speech. Eisenhower was a Republican in the first part, as I remember, but he was warning about the military-industrial complex.
Right.
Biden represents the military-industrial complex.
Exactly. And he was warning against the tech-industrial complex.
Yeah.
Because they're getting rid of fact-checking.
Because, well, here's the irony. The whole thing on the AI.
Yeah.
It isn't that Zuckerberg is getting rid of fact-checking. He's getting rid of fact-checkers.
Yeah,
He's getting rid of humans. He is allowing the AIs now to do all of that. That's another reason why this technocracy requires a massive AI system.
Yep. It absolutely does. In fact, I need to get back in touch with Patrick Wood. He gave us a copy of his new book. He's the author of the book Technocracy Rising, which has been out for about 15 years.
Yep.
And
so respected.
boy, I'll tell you what, that book really will open your eyes. If you've not read Technocracy Rising by Patrick M. Wood, you need to.
Run out now. Just go away. Don't even listen. No, do listen to the end. Never mind. Forget I said that.
I do get that. But I do need to get in touch with Patrick and have him back on A View from the Bunker to talk about his new book, which kind of expands on that. But he looks at this from a prophetic standpoint.
He does.
That was what so impressed me about Technocracy Rising. His research into the origins of it goes back to the 1930s and the technocracy movement, and how it will be used to provide the infrastructure for the Antichrist. But he reserves the spot, the chapter on biblical prophecy for the very end of the book. So you're through the whole book. It's like, okay, I see how this all fits together and how this is going to be. Oh, wait, Antichrist using it. So people who would read the book getting to the end and then suddenly are hit with the how it fits into a biblical worldview. Brilliant, brilliant work.
That is the kind of book that you want to read now, but you also want to have available in your home or your church or wherever, so that when the day comes that the Antichrist is rising, someone might read that book who hasn't yet volunteered for the chip and may find Christ through a book like that. So we need to keep warning about that. We are at the end of this, and we promised you we would tell you, first of all, about the trip to Israel.
Yes, the trip to Israel is still on, October 19th through 30th of 2025. And we've got enough at this point for a small bus.
Yeah, we do. And I think that that's going to be a really fun group to take. Because there's something, first of all, we've had as many as 3 buses, and every bus forms a little family. So this will be the only bus. Therefore, this will be the only little family. And Derek and I can't be on every bus. So we love forming that little family. So we always think, oh gosh, I barely got to talk to you, and we've tried to go table to table, hopping in the cafeterias or the dining halls and maybe when we stop for lunch, but it's very difficult to get to know everybody when you've got 120 people. When you've got 40 or 50 people, it's so doable. Right. So this is going to be a wonderful tour. If you've already signed up, thank you for doing so. If you haven't signed up yet, we've got a few more seats on the bus. Still plenty of time to do it. Bus will hold about 50, and right now we're about half full. We would love, for as many people as feel comfortable to do it, to come along and join us. Yes. But if this is a smaller group, that's fine. We're going anyway, and we'll be happy to take you every place that is open to us. Now, that's, again, a lot depends on what happens between now and October. And we do need to tell you, those of you who have already signed up, or those of you who are thinking about it, and you're thinking, I'm going to go with Tim Alberino. Here's the sad thing. Yes. 2 words: blurry creatures. BlurryCon is in October. It may be. Well, that's Nate and Luke haven't set the dates yet, but because of that, and because Tim and Judd and Doug are all very good friends with him, and especially because they're really encouraging Dr. Judd Burton to be at BlurryCon 3, which they've tentatively titled The Return of Judd. Well, exactly. So we can't take Judd away from that. Right. We don't want to put them in a position of having to choose. So we've put that group, Tim Alberino, Doug Van Dorn, Judd Burton, they're going to be in our 2026 tour. Right. We haven't picked out the dates yet, but it will probably be in the spring. So if you want to go with them, you can think about going with us in the spring. If it doesn't matter to you that it's just Derek and me, just the Gilberts, we guarantee you we'll have fun. Absolutely. And we'll take you places you've never been before. I'll tell you, the small group that we took back in the spring for our Solidarity mission. That was wonderful. It was wonderful because it was a small group. We were with each other every day, every meal. And so there was a really tightly knit group. We still communicate back and forth with one another on Telegram. And by the way, subscribe to us on Telegram. You'll see the link in the show notes below this. But anyway, that's the announcement for the fall. Yes, we've got 3 Telegram channels, one general and one for each of us, where we post news items and things. So the October tour, October 19th through 30th, our special guests, Tim Alberino, Doug Van Dorn, Dr. Judd Burton, they will be with us in the spring of 2026. Probably we're still confirming dates with Lipkin Tours, but the latest information will always be at gilberthouse.org/travel, or if you've got our app, go to the calendar tab and then go to upcoming events, where you'll see a number of other things there, like I'll be in Canada, Manitoba, in just a few weeks, 1 month from now, 24/7 Men's Discipleship Weekend. I'm sorry? I can't go because it's Manitoba. Oh, it's Manitoba. It is the Men's Discipleship Weekend. Yeah, if it was if Person it was Manitoba or something. So this is a full weekend of discipleship for men. There'll be other activities, but the theme of the weekend is Giants, Gods, and Dragons, recovering the biblical worldview of the apostles and prophets. And I will be speaking 8 times. 8 times.
So you find out more
8
at
times.
valleyviewbiblecamp.com, valleyviewbiblecamp.com. Got a few other events on the calendar, excuse me, and other events that we are looking at. And again, coming back to the store.
Yeah, gilberthouse.org/store. We have, it's been a wonderful time, a wonderful, well, we'll call it an experiment to see what it would be like to have a store. But the truth is, Derek and I like to be content providers. We like to write books. We like to do podcasts. We like to do, I guess you can call it television shows if you like Unraveling Revelation, the Bible's Greatest Mysteries. We love doing things like that. Running a store takes a lot of effort and a lot of hours out of a day. And it's just, we've just decided after much prayer, we've decided that we're going to close it down.
Yeah.
So January 31st?
Yeah. Now, the links will still be there. You can still go to gilberthouse.org/store. If you want to go and get Gilbert House or PID Radio or the Armored Sheep merchandise,
Yes.
that comes from Light Hive Creations. So that link will be there to take you to their store where you can order mugs, shirts, sweatshirts, caps. All of that will be there.
And do we still have the coffee that we...
yeah, Simply Clean Foods. The link there
Yeah.
to Simply Clean Foods, which is freeze-dried, non-GMO food.
And I have to tell you,
coffee.
Their stuff is delicious.
It really is.
It is so good. And you can get it, seriously, you can just use it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what he wants you to do.
Use it for regular
This is
cooking, yes.
really healthy, clean food.
You can store it for long periods of time on the shelf for emergencies, but you can also use it for everyday cooking. And again, that link will still be there. And we will probably still have links there for our books and things to direct you to Amazon so that you can go to Amazon for, say, the books from Defender Publishing.
Right.
Because they also have Audible and Kindle versions. So
Yes.
our books now are becoming available in Audible format.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, Second Coming of Saturn, and The Gates of Hell are all available as Audible books, as well as all of the Red Wing Saga?
All the Red Wing Sagas on Audible.
All of the Red Wing Saga is now
and
available.
Armageddon Strain and Winds of Evil are all
The
also
God Conspiracy and Iron Dragons also available as Kindle and Audible as well. So we'll put those links there just so you can go directly to those spots in Amazon.
But also things like our travelogumentaries, you'll be able to stream those online if you want to.
Right.
So we're going to connect to all of that, but we are not going to have a store where we box things up ourselves and then ship them out. It's expensive. I'll be honest. It's very costly.
We have to buy the
because
boxes
software and all of the things and the shipping materials. It really adds up. But we are trying to do the best we can with every dollar that the Lord brings in, to much of it from you, from your donations. We cannot thank you enough. When the Lord leads and you say yes, we are able to do the things He's called us to do.
Right.
And so we want to be good stewards of what you give us.
And it comes down to this. We'd reached a point with the store where we could go one of two directions, which is either hire somebody, and then, of course, then we are responsible for making sure that we've got a certain minimum level of income to provide for that person.
Exactly.
And that then starts pushing us in the direction of what can we do to raise more revenue.
Right. No, don't ever
above
want
and
to go
beyond
there.
what we need to just survive, which is minimal.
We don't need much. We really don't need much.
Right.
But the
So
Lord
it's
provides.
either go big or go home, and rather than getting big, because we just don't feel like that is our calling.
No, we actually like being just a mom and pop thing.
Exactly. So we'd rather have just sort of the passive fulfillment. We'll send you to Amazon for books. We will send you to our streaming video site where you can get instant access to our video teachings and our travelogumentaries.
And we are going to keep enough stock on hand so that when we go to a conference, we can have those things with us there. Derek and I don't want to be in the position of where we feel like we're trying to shill our stuff. But if you come to a conference and you want a book, say, if we've got it, you can get it from us. Or, if you've already bought it from Amazon or whatever, and you want to come and bring it to the conference and have us sign it, why you want us to sign it is always beyond me. But we're so happy to do that for you.
Right.
You don't have to buy anything from us, ever.
Yeah.
But, we don't want to ever be in a position where our ministry, part of our ministry is making sure we get you to buy from us.
Right.
That's not what we're in this for.
And again, it takes time each day, hours each day.
Yeah.
To
and I was about ready to. This morning the printer jammed 3 times.
Yeah.
And then it tore as I was trying to get the jam out. It was so frustrating, and the software stopped working. The website disappeared. Mm-hmm. It was like everything went wrong. I mean, seriously, everything. It printed on the wrong side of the labels. It was so many things that were going wrong, and I finally just said, Lord, okay, because at this point you and I were teetering on making the decision. I came in and I said, I think the Lord just told me, just close it down.
Mm-hmm. Shut it down. So anyway, January 31st, direct sales of books and DVDs will conclude. Mm-hmm. We this afternoon are going to start lowering prices on a number of items just to reduce the stock that we've got.
And we just get it in your hands.
Yeah, and this will also free up space out there in the barn that we can reallocate for other things.
Possibly do the Bible's Greatest Mystery Studio that we were hoping to do, but didn't have the space.
Right, yeah. Recreating the whole library type set there. So
in fact, we could expand the Unraveling Revelation set, make a library part of it.
That would be kind of cool, too.
Think about that.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the reasoning behind that. It's just trying to make the most of the time that we have available. Mm-hmm. And as we mentioned, a number of conferences coming up, several that we can't even tell you about yet because they're
it's embargoed.
Not firmly committed yet, but
we'll let you know.
It's looking like we're going to be traveling at least once a month from now through October.
Yeah, and we're getting to that age where traveling is a bigger deal. Plus, we have to find a place for our dogs every time.
That's
we go
true.
See
yes.
Anti-lean, but anti-lean has to be available.
Yeah, I mean, we do love going to the conferences because seeing you face-to-face is a reminder of why we do what we do, and we truly, truly appreciate that. We spend most of our time at our tables, and we miss some really great presentations by other speakers, but that's because people, when you're there and you want to talk, we want to be available.
Yeah, exactly. And we love that.
Yeah.
The body of Christ, we need to love on one another and support one another and lift each other up and minister to one another.
Yeah.
And that's very difficult to do virtually.
It is. So anyway, that's the reasoning behind what's going on here. If you want to follow what we're doing, again, go to the gilberthouse.org. Go to the GHTV app. We've got the calendar section there. But at our website, too, we've got a section there for upcoming events. And we will always have those available there.
And by the way, if you're watching this or listening to this on YouTube and you've not yet subscribed to our channel, please do. And share the videos with your friends and others. Mm-hmm. And also hit the notification bell because sometime in 2025, Derek and I might just go live.
Yeah,
you never know.
We experiment on that.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen and subscribe via all of the various podcatchers out there, which, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora.
Don't know how.
Wherever fine podcasts are sold. And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert. And for Grace and Glory, who are saying they want out of that crate, we love you guys. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @PID Radio or the PID Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.